Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to talk about a very powerful Hatha Yoga technique known as NAULI KRIYA and how to access NAULI KRIYA through the kumbhaka. The kumbhaka is the breath retention. And in the yoga tradition, the breath retention is prized as it is the most important part of pranayama to develop the internalization of the awareness and through the kumbhaka beginning to walk the path to access the true nature of our soul. So stick around because I'm going to share some of the secrets and tricks to the technique of NAULI KRIYA, which is the rotation of the abdomen. And if that's not available or accessible to you, that's totally fine because there's a couple different stages that I'll lay out. So let's get started. First of all, just to contextualize what we're doing, we can access the kumbhaka, we can access the breath retention through different kriyas and different pranayamas. And there's many different quote-unquote breathwork techniques out there today, and all of them stem from the spiritual science of yoga and tantra. Why that's important to acknowledge is because when we're looking at things like breathwork, and I'm using air quotes, we really want to approach it by understanding where it's coming from. And in the tradition of yoga, the idea of pranayama is that we can start to not only regulate the life force energy, which is the prana, but we can start to use that regulation of the life force to gain control and mastery over the mind and all of the different functions of the body. So if you're seeking balance, harmony, health, these practices are really essential for not only developing a robust nervous system, but creating balance between all the systems of the body. So that's a little contextualization. You can watch other videos on my channel if you want to learn more. But in this video, we're talking about specifically NAULI KRIYA. So what is NAULI KRIYA? NAULI is the rotation of the abdomen. This comes from Hatha Yoga. I'll demonstrate for you, and then you'll see me demonstrating, and then we'll do a practice together and access that state of kumbhaka, the breath retention, and do the different stages that I'll be sharing in this video. So the first step is learning Uddiyana Bandha. Uddiyana means to fly upward. It's when we exhale completely and there's no air in the lungs, we can suck the diaphragm in and up and pull the navel towards the spine. It looks like this. And that starts to purify and transform the energy in the lower chakras of the body. The Muladhara at the root, Svadhisthana at the hips, and Manipura, the solar plexus. Flying upward is in the withdrawal and the pulling of that energy from the base up towards the brain. This reverses the usual flow of the downward energy, the downward moving current of energy. It's known as the apana. In Hatha Yoga, why this is important is because when we bring those two forces, the downward flowing force and the upward flowing force together here in the cauldron of the solar plexus, there's like a nuclear reaction and there's a release of evolutionary energy. That's what we're looking for. So that first step, Uddiyana Bandha, we exhale, stick out the tongue, and as the tongue goes out, the belly comes in. Okay, you got that? The breath is held out the entire time. So that's the first stage. If we can do that, then we start to practice that every time there's a kumbhaka, when we're, especially with Bhuta Yoga and the practices that we do on this channel and how I teach. We do this a lot because this Bandha, Uddiyana, is very powerful and a really great tool to have in our tool belt. Once that's established and we can do that comfortably, we go on to the second stage, which is known as Agnisara. Agnisara is the pumping. Agni means fire. So we're like pumping, like a bellows, like pumping to fan the flame here, the cauldron of the solar plexus. I'll demonstrate. First step, Uddiyana, and then pumping. Right? And we do as many pumps as we can comfortably without straining and without rushing for the inhalation. A lot of times what happens after Uddiyana or Agnisara or NAULI KRIYA is there's like a gasp for air, like the inhale rushes in. We want to control that gasp and not gasp. So the idea is that after we finished, let's say I do 10 or 15 or 20 of those, I lift my chin, I stay empty, and then I inhale slowly through my nose, calmly and slowly. And I keep pulling the navel back as I'm inhaling. If the navel stays back as I inhale, the breath moves into the spine and the posterior, which fills up all along the back side of the body until we get to the top of the inhale. And then there's another breath hold in. And like everything is consolidating. All that energy that we just stirred up, it's consolidating in that central channel of the spine. That's the second stage, Agnisara, the pumping, and the inhale. The third stage, NAULI KRIYA, the rotation. Slow inhale after we finish. Navel stays back. Breath moves into the spine. Get to the top, hold. For as long as comfortable, release the chin, exhale. Try not to collapse the posture. Stay firm in the posture and exhale slowly. That's the third stage, the rotation of the abdomen, NAULI KRIYA. Until NAULI KRIYA is established, until we can actually rotate the abdomen, and this isn't like it's something that takes time to develop. And it's okay, like wherever we're at is fine. Until we can do that, we do one of the previous stages. So if we can do just Uddiyana Bandha, that's fine, that's what we work with. If we can do the pumping, Agnisara, then we do the pumping. If we can do the pumping and we can start to shift and lean the torso and isolate different sides of the rectus abdominis, these center muscles of the abdominals, then we can start to move towards NAULI KRIYA. That's really all we need to do to start to learn this practice. And it's totally fine if it takes a while. It took me a while to learn it because the previous stages are really powerful tools anyways, and we can always go back to using those as foundations. So the thing I want to leave you with is that the path of yoga and all these different practices, there's stages of development and stages of unlocking the inner power, you could say, of the body and the intelligence of the body and the mind. And as we go through those stages and as that intelligence starts to unlock itself, that's the beauty of the path, is because there's progression and there's a feeling not just of accomplishment, but there's a literal change in the chemistry of the body, and the mind starts to operate differently, the nervous system starts to operate differently. These are all the deeper benefits of the path of yoga. And this is why breath work becomes pranayama as we start to learn how to master the life force. Subscribe if this has been helpful, and remember to check out one of the other videos where I'll guide practices where you can use these techniques in your daily life for freedom. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you soon.